Gaza ceasefire burnishes Qatari image as global mediator. Having transformed an Israeli attack on Qatari soil into diplomatic momentum for a ceasefire in Gaza, Doha is forging ahead on other thorny conflicts. October 20, 2025 at 2 a.m. EDT. Today at 2 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. 7 minutes. Summary. 1. Qatari Emir Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, right, with President Donald Trump, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on October 13 at a ceasefire summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. Suzanne Plunkett-Poole, Reuters. By Susanna George. Having transformed an Israeli attack on Qatari soil into diplomatic momentum for a ceasefire in Gaza, officials in Doha are forging ahead on other thorny conflicts, including the escalating tensions between the United States and Venezuela. Get concise answers to your questions. Try Ask the Post AI. After the presence of a Hamas delegation in its capital drew the Israel Defense Forces airstrike last month, the tiny Persian Gulf nation might have reassessed its foreign policy. But senior Qatari leaders are instead signaling that the ceasefire's success has vindicated their approach. Qatar is currently pursuing at least 9 diplomatic efforts around the world, including negotiations with the Afghan Taliban over imprisoned Americans, the peace deal between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda, and prisoner exchanges between Russia and Ukraine. There always needs to be someone to talk to unsavory actors. Qatar is willing to play that role, and the United States has used them over and over, said Dana Stroul, a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East now with the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. Globe showing America's. Follow World News. Follow. Talks hosted by Doha over the weekend led to a ceasefire between Pakistan and the Afghan Taliban. The Qatari effort between the United States and Venezuela was described by one diplomat as a modest attempt to keep lines of communication open. The diplomat, like others quoted in this report, spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss the sensitive matter. The mediation began under the Biden administration, according to a U.S. official, but it has not been prioritized under the Trump administration, which is instead ratcheting up military pressure. Trump said this week he had authorized covert CIA operations inside Venezuela, the latest escalation against the authoritarian socialist government of President Nicolas Maduro. But in July, the diplomat said, Qatar helped coordinate the exchange of 10 Americans held in Venezuela for more than 250 Venezuelans who were deported by the Trump administration to El Salvador, the result of months of complex negotiations between Washington, Caracas, and San Salvador. Arsonist and firefighter. Smoke rises from a deadly Israeli strike in Doha, Qatar, on September 9. AP. But the relationship between Washington and Doha is complicated. Some in the United States accuse Qatar of playing both sides. During Trump's first term, he accused Qatar of funding terrorism. Trump supporters called the decision this month to permit a Qatari training facility at a U.S. airbase in Idaho a betrayal. Such criticisms rankle Qatari officials. But the Israeli attack on September 9, which targeted Hamas leaders but killed at least one Qatari citizen, threw the country into an existential crisis. The IDF fired 10 missiles at a residential building in the Lektafia district of Doha, 5 miles from the offices of Qatar's Emir and Prime Minister. Qatari Emir Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, addressing the UN General Assembly days after the attack, denounced the strike as treacherous and accused Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of state terrorism. A former senior Western diplomat who had previously been posted to Doha said he anticipated some Qatari leaders would advise more caution in diplomacy going forward. Qatar has had its foreign policy stress-tested, probably beyond its comfort zone, he said. After Hamas attacked Israel on October 7, 2023, killing some 1,200 people and taking 251 more back to Gaza, Doha's relationship with the militant group left it feeling pretty exposed, he said. But the way they decided to make that relationship work for them was to say we can negotiate hostage releases. Now that all the living hostages have been released from Gaza, Qatar is expected to re-examine the utility of allowing Hamas to maintain an office in Doha, according to a European official briefed on the matter. Whatever it decides, the official said, it's expected to continue supporting the next phase of ceasefire talks and humanitarian aid. Barbara Leaf, an Assistant Secretary of State for the region under President Joe Biden, said the 2 years since October 7 have been taxing both physically and politically for Qatar. I would see Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani, the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, at very regular intervals over the 15 months I was in office, and there were times when he was just literally grey with fatigue, she said. She said Qatar was under constant pressure to pressure Hamas. It was no question the hardest things they've ever been asked to do. But the effort gave Qatar the opportunity not only to strengthen ties with the United States but also to expand contacts with Israeli intelligence. Mossad, Israel's external intelligence agency, took the lead on hostage negotiations with Hamas. Over the 2 years, Israeli intelligence need to be useful. Ali bin Fitaiz Al-Mari, Qatar's Attorney General, speaks at a news conference in Doha in 2017. AFP Getty Images. During Qatar's 2017 blockade crisis, when Saudi Arabia closed the Emirates' only land border and several countries severed air and sea links to punish Doha for its ties with militant groups and Iran, Doha doubled down on long-standing efforts to make itself indispensable to Washington. The effort has succeeded, Strahl said. Officials of both the Biden and Trump administrations concluded Qatar was a value-added partner. During the Biden administration, she said, the defining experience for many was Qatar's help during the U.S. withdrawal from. Qatar's growing diplomatic influence has come into sharper focus following its central role in brokering the temporary ceasefire in Gaza. Long known for hosting negotiations between rival regional actors, Doha has now positioned itself as one of the few governments capable of speaking simultaneously with Western allies, Islamist groups, and regional power players. This unique positioning has given Qatar a rare diplomatic leverage that few countries in the Middle East currently possess. The ceasefire negotiations highlighted what Qatar has been building for years, an identity as a trusted facilitator rather than a partisan military power. Unlike Saudi Arabia or Iran, Doha does not project strength through armies or proxy militias, it projects it through talks, hosting envoys, intelligence channels, and humanitarian diplomacy. By enabling dialogue between Israel, Hamas, and the United States, Qatar strengthened its reputation as a state that can open doors others cannot. This mediator role also reflects strategic soft power. Qatar is keenly aware that its small size makes traditional defense strategies impractical, so influence must be cultivated through diplomacy, finance, and humanitarian outreach. Hosting peace negotiations is not just a regional service, it is a security strategy. However, Qatar's growing profile is not without controversy. Some Western critics argue that its role depends partly on long-standing ties with Hamas, while others praise Doha for using these relations to de-escalate violence and evacuate civilians. Still, with limited actors trusted on both sides, Qatar's role has become indispensable, not optional.